I want to move to the second big area of cases in front of the court: reproductive health, right to an abortion, right to drugs that can facilitate an abortion. Big case in front of the court right now involving the FDA. Explain that to the viewers.
Yeah, so this is a case about the FDA's authority to regulate drugs broadly, and in particular to decide that it's safe to reduce restrictions on abortion pills. The most important part of what the FDA did was to say that doctors could prescribe pills and those pills could be sent through the mail, that you didn't have to go have an in-person visit with an abortion provider to get the pills. The challenge is brought by some doctors who are anti-abortion and who say that because of the FDA's decision, the number of complications from abortions has risen and they might have to treat such a complication in the hospital. It's a very hypothetical claim, not the kind of claim that you usually get into court for successfully. Usually you have to show, I actually experienced a harm.
Directly.
Yes, and it's really hard to see that here. So during the argument before the Supreme Court, it seemed entirely likely that there would be a strong majority of justices, maybe even 7 justices, who would say, you know what, this is not the right case. These plaintiffs didn't really experience harm, and we're not going to decide these issues about the FDA's authority, whether the FDA did it right in loosening these restrictions, because we don't have the right people standing here in court. And that would kick this can down the road, which will be very important because this is the case that affects women across the country.
Right.
It's not state by state. It's not Idaho's abortion ban. It's the FDA's authority to allow pills to be shipped everywhere, and other rules that have made abortion pills more accessible for women in blue as well as red states.
4 women on the Supreme Court right now, historic high water mark. How has that played out in the arguments and the discussion on the court on issues that are setting back, let's be clear, women's rights for decades in the United States?
So in Dobbs, which overturned Roe, Justice Barrett voted with the men on the court to overturn Roe versus Wade. She has not taken any kind of vote yet in an abortion case that softens that result. It will be interesting to see if that continues this term. In the FDA case we were talking about, there's also a case out of Idaho that is about whether Idaho can have an exception to its abortion ban that only applies when someone is at risk of death. A very, very strict limit, right? Doctors have to say this person is going to die before they can do an abortion. And the federal government, the Biden administration, is challenging that law under what's called EMTALA, which is the federal law that says that emergency room docs have to provide necessary stabilizing treatment for people. So the idea is you shouldn't have to wait till a woman is at the brink of death to do an abortion if that's the procedure that is necessary to spare her from losing an organ or going into a coma. And in the context of that case, Justice Barrett asked a lot of sharp questions that were really about women's experience of labor and delivery that seemed like she was taking this very seriously. Now, we'll have to see how she votes to know whether that really makes a difference, but there was a level of candor about women's health and experience of pregnancy and labor that was, unusual at the court.